All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the June 4th committee meetings. We're going to start off with the Public Works Committee and your chair and host, Commissioner Zieggenfeld. Please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm opening the June 4th Public Works Committee meeting. We have a large agenda, and I want to make sure that we have time for the most significant elements. So I'm going to go over quickly, uncharacteristically quickly, the monthly reports and the Citizens Committee meeting minutes to a large degree. Item 1A, May 2025 Highway Department Report. Item B, April 2025 Refuse and Recycling Department Report. C, May 2025 Parks Maintenance Department Report. Item D, May 2025 Street and Traffic Light Superintendent Report. And item E, the May 2025 Fleet Superintendent Report. I'm looking for feedback on any of from our township commissioners on any of those items, A, B, C, D, or E. I'm seeing head shake and I'm seeing no fingers wiggling or wagging at me. So I'm going to move for acceptance of items 1A, B, C, D, and E as the monthly reports from the various township groups. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. You're so happy that I went through that quickly. Item F is the May 2021 Stormwater Coordinator Report. And I have one question for you, Sam. I saw there are a number of applications made for May and beyond for funding and that kind of thing. And I'm just curious, you know, are we in a position with the limited resources in grant writing, et cetera, to be able to get to those? Or do you have sufficient time and help to be able to do that? And do you need any assistance from some of us on the board or whatever? So I just want to make sure. I saw that there's additional submissions being made or have been made. And I'm just making sure that we have adequate resources to be able to continue to go full tilt on all of these stormwater coordinator needs, because it also extends beyond that to some of our other grant requests as well.
Yeah, we have, a great staff, and, everybody has pitched in, and, we already submitted most of the grant applications that were due, and our township engineer is assisting with the one Growing Greener grant, so we should be in good shape. Thank you.
Great, appreciate it. And, it's important for us to know that, if there are other opportunities that we're ready to do whatever we need to do to roll up our sleeves and help on that as well. Any other comments or questions from members of the board on item F, which is the May 2025 Stormwater Coordinator Report? I see none from the board, so I'll move for approval of item F, the May 2025 Stormwater Coordinator Report. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Item G, the Shade Tree Advisory Committee, May 8th, 2025 meeting. And I wanted to just tease out two items from Shade Tree. The fact was that Shade Tree on a number of occasions has reviewed the proposed Melrose, Enclave at Melrose Country Club development. And in their last meeting, they gave unanimous conditional approval to all of the items which they've raised, which are subject matter experts have raised, in particular our arborists. So it's just acknowledging that there's been a lot of time and effort invested by the Shade Tree Advisory Committee to provide input, to reflect and to pick up on some of the issues that came from both staff and from the Montgomery County Planning Commission. So it's important to say that this has gone through so far a very thorough process. I'll ask if any other members of the board have any other input for the Shade Tree Advisory Commission minutes. Commissioner Norris, thank you for interrupting me.
Thank you, Commissioner Zieggenfeld. Just a quick addition for the Shade Tree Commission. A reminder, these are citizens committees, and we very much appreciate their input, the time and effort they spend, as well as their valuable input. It is very much appreciated and helpful. It's absolutely necessary for our process. So thank you.
I think that's really an important point, that it are citizens who've invested time and energy and their expertise to try and make that happen. So thank you, Commissioner Norris, for reminding me that that's a big part of this as well. Any other feedback? I see none, so I will move for approval of the Shade Tree Advisory Commission minutes. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item H is the Environmental Advisory Council, the May 19th meeting. And there are two items I'd like to tease out from that meeting. I think it's time that we, and this is a question or comment to both staff and to our legal counsel. In February, the single-use plastics, which included limiting use of styrofoam and only requested use of plastic utensils and straws. It's been a while since that has been under consideration, and I'd like to know if we can make a move on that ordinance sometime so that we can put that on the agenda for next month. I think it's not been the highest of priority, but it's one we've been effective in the single-use plastic bags, and I see no reason why we should continue to delay on that. So I'm asking for guidance to see whether we can move that into a more active mode for the July agendas. Any concerns on that, Mr. Diazio or staff?
Yeah, I don't know that we'll be ready for July, maybe probably toward the end of the summer. So August, September might be a more realistic timeframe for us to be able to have something reviewed and ready.
Okay, thank you for that update and feedback. And I'll just say, I think that they've, as Commissioner Norris has said, you know, the citizens on that committee as well have invested a lot of time and attention, and we need to try and move that along. So, you know, we'll give it an additional month to get through the summer. Thank you, Township Manager Elliott. Any other questions or comments on the Environmental Advisory Council report? I see none, so I'll move for the acceptance of their minutes and their efforts as well. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we go to item 2, old business. Are there any items for old business for Public Works? Commissioner Rappaport, I saw that finger. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks. So like with that other ordinance that you mentioned, which I would have mentioned and was concerned about the delays. When is that meeting with DEP on the Glenside flood project basin design going to take place? We talked about that last month. I really would like to get that going.
We haven't had a chance to set something up yet, but I'll ask Sam if she could put that on her radar to follow up with
Okay.
DEP.
If I can help, you know, since, you know, I'm eager to do that, let me know.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rappaport. Any other items for old business from members of the board? I see none, so I will close all business and move to item 3, new business. Item 3A. Consider recommending the Board of Commissioners approve an agreement with Cheltenham Deer Management for the 2025-2026 Deer Management Program. There is an attachment, and I'd ask Chris Drock, who is a consistent presence, as well as Mr. McMahon, to give us an update. And there may be 1 or 2 items that I'll ask for additional input on. So, Chris.
Yeah, we're basically looking for the same program as the last couple years, with the exception of deleting Wingate and adding Parkview. Spoken with Commissioner Brockington about that. It'll be the same program. It'll be about 30 hunters. We have some new names on the list that we'll do background checks on, and everybody will have to complete a safety course and a competency shoot. This year's season runs from September 20th to January 24th with no Sunday hunting. And it would be the same hours, from dawn to 9:30 in the morning, and then 2:30 to dark. So that it's like I said, you know the players, you know the game. I mean, it's pretty much the same deal. Last year, I think we harvested 67 deer. Our goal is to add a few more hunters and try to increase the numbers. It seems like maybe we're holding the herd in the township at like a consistent number. Although, on my way to work the other morning, I passed 4 of them on the road, 4 dead deer on the road going to work the other morning. So it's a challenge, but we'll give it a shot.
Thanks. Are there any questions on that, Commissioner Arment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, thanks for the success you've had in the past, and it's a really important program. I'm not saying we need to do this, but I would request that you look at Grove Park in Glenside and see if that is able to be added to this list. I see 4 to 6 deer just sort of meandering around in that area pretty much every day. So if it's too small, I understand. And if it's not conducive, I understand. But I'd appreciate if you would just look to see if it's possible to add to the list, Grove Park.
I think we talked about this last year, Commissioner, and like Jimmy and I went over and took a look. I think it's just so tight there.
Got it. Okay.
That's generally the challenge throughout the whole township. I mean, it's not in the middle of Bucks County. We're in a pretty urban area where it's tight, and I mean, safety's the paramount concern.
Absolutely.
We'll take another look at it, though. We'll see if there's anything we can figure out.
I appreciate it. If not, we'll just get them with our cars. No,
well, that's what keeps happening. That's
I know. I know. But I appreciate you. I appreciate you checking up on it again. Thanks, Chris, and thanks for everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Rappaport.
Now, thank you. I just wanted to make sure we thank them tremendously. We're volunteers, and you're really providing service to the township. Appreciate it.
Amen to that. Commissioner Brockington.
Yeah, I sort of want to piggyback on Commissioner Rappaport's statement, but Chris, I want to basically apologize to you for the harassment you got earlier in the week. Someone posted Chris' personal phone number, his address, and Chris called me. He was starting to get some really nasty calls about something that we asked him to do. We as commissioners asked him to do this, and he should not have been harassed the way he was. And I want to apologize to you and say that, I support what you're doing. I know we didn't do Parkview last year, and we're going to come back and do Parkview this year. Maybe we'll do it every other year, but you have my backing and my support, and all the commissioners, I'm sure. And again, I want to apologize for what you had to go through earlier in the week when you were texting me about the harassing calls you were getting. And that wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to you for you to get that. So
Irv, thank you. I certainly wasn't aware of it. So, look, this is a necessary service, period. Yeah. Right. The work that you and your team does every year saves lives and saves damage to property in terms of dangerous car accidents and whatnot. So to the extent you've received negative feedback from the community, it is not deserved. On behalf of the board and behalf of all our staff and the residents who understand and appreciate the hard work and value that you bring, I echo Commissioner Brockington's apologies and condemn anybody who's criticizing you personally for the service that you and your team are providing.
I appreciate it. Anybody that does anything in public service, you guys definitely get this. You rarely get. It is what it is. Nothing you can do about it. It would be nice if people could have level-headed, reasonable conversations based on fact. That would be a huge help, just in life in general, I think. But
sure,
it is what it is. So,
and I'm sure we all basically support the comments, because we do appreciate it and we know the benefit that this program has brought to the township. Commissioner Lewis, I saw your hand go up.
Yes, thank you. Has the township taken a position on this issue? Have they announced to the residents this program? It's a program that we endorse. Has that been done?
We've done this
Mul-
program. what is
multiple
this, the fifth,
times.
I think this is year
Multiple years.
5, isn't it?
Yeah, multiple years.
Yeah,
All right,
This
why
is-
can't we do it every year?
We do.
we do. Every year it gets renewed.
I understand. Is it announced on the website or via some other communications tool that this is a program that we
Yes,
have initiated and support?
Yep.
yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, and they still hold Chris accountable or responsible?
Yes.
Yes.
That's
At least
great.
this year, it was like
Okay,
It's about, I believe, Commissioner, I believe it's about the 10th year that the program's been in place. There was a Abington Deer Management did it for about 5 or 6 years, and I think we took it over about 4 years ago.
Mhm.
And just, I always try to go on record. Most of the participants are township police officers, township firefighters, township public works employees. Most of the people involved are all involved in public service in our own township. That should give the residents a little bit more comfort. I would hope.
okay.
Good, thank you. I do want to ask, go ahead.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, I do want to ask one question, Chris. I know a number of residents have requested the ability to have calling or action taken on their property. And I wonder if you could just say what the criteria is and what the possibilities are for consideration of those special situations, just so that people who have made that request know what's involved.
Yes. So frequently throughout the year, people get a hold of the township. It usually goes through Lauren Walter, and she passes it on to us. She does a great job managing, like being the middleman on all this. And we go so the rules are the Pennsylvania game laws. You have to be within 50 feet, or I'm sorry, 50 yards of a occupied residence. You have to be further than 50 yards to legally hunt, unless you have permission from any resident that's within that 50 yards. So essentially, like if you get a hold of us and you got a problem in your yard, we'll come out and take a look at it. If you have neighbors that agree to allow hunting to occur, neighbors that are within that 50-yard perimeter, then we can do it. But if you have 6 neighbors that are within those 50 yards and one guy says no, then it can't happen. So because we have to operate within the game laws, there's really no wiggle room there. So that's really the big issue, is that 50-yard perimeter with permission. And then there are some places we go out, we just can't do it. It's too tight. Like again, right? It all goes back to safety. And I know the deer are a hassle and they wreck stuff. And if we can possibly do it for you, we'll do it. But that's just the guideline for the public. And I can even I can pass that on, Mitch, to Lauren, and I'll give her like the guideline, and
Sure.
she can get that posted for us.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments for
Mitch,
yeah, go ahead.
is there any way you can put us in contact with who owns or who is running Melrose Country Club before it completely gets built on? Because like we mentioned last year, there is a lot of deer in there. If we can get in there this season, it would definitely benefit the township, as opposed to having them all pushed out into the neighborhoods and streets before it gets developed.
Well, if you'll stay on the line, the next topic is the development proposal for the Melrose Country Club area. And I'll make sure that that question, if you're still on the line, you can raise it, or we will ask for who you should be connected with in order for that action to be incorporated on that property.
Yeah, if you just get us a number, I got to give my kids a tubby and whatnot. My wife's working tonight, so I can't stay on the meeting for the whole time. But
Mr. McCann, this is
Hold
Joe
on.
Byrne.
Hold on for a second. Go ahead, Joe.
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
That's
Mr.
okay.
McCann, this is Joe Byrne. I'm the owner of Melrose. I'll get our attorney to share my contact information through the through the invite for this meeting, so you'll have it.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you very much, and look forward to speaking with you.
Take care of
Same
that child. She's
Oh.
making noise.
Yeah, we'll take care of it. Don't worry.
Good.
Okay, so I will, with all that input, I will move for the recommendation of the board to approve the agreement with Cheltenham Deer Management for the 2025-2026 season. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you. Now we go to new business item B. Consider recommending the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution granting conditional approval and associated waivers for a preliminary land development application, CTDA number 25-02, the Enclave at Melrose, 7600 Tookany Creek Parkway, for the proposed redevelopment of a former golf course into a mix of residential, institutional, commercial, and community uses, removal of existing buildings and golf course amenities by regrading the site and installing new private roads, sidewalks, pathways, utilities, and stormwater management infrastructure as part of a phased approach. And there is an attachment on the website. Before we go into discussion, I just want to do a little bit of highlighting and summarizing what has happened since the original stated interest from the owners of the Enclave, which was last August in 2024. And they asked for a mixed use exception based on the development's potential contribution to that local community as well as to the whole township. On that basis, there were a series of public meetings as well as meetings with our our citizens committees and our formal committees, the Shade Tree Advisory Committee, the Planning Commission, extensive meetings with Public Works, and obviously with the Board of Commissioners. There was input from all those groups as well as our subject matter experts in planning, in code, in stormwater management, through arborists, our traffic expert, our legal folks. There was significant back and forth with the Montgomery County Planning Commission with their questions and input, and there were cooperative responses from the developer. And finally, at this stage, there is still from our planning and zoning folks, there are questions about compliance with improvements in the stormwater basin, in 100% impervious coverage, in site maintenance during construction, and in the use of public areas and trails as part of that. So the point here is this is not a process that has gone through routine review. It's gone through multiple layers. There's been a lot of public attention. There's been a lot of back and forth. And so as we start to have this consideration, there may be some outstanding matters that some in the community may want to bring up that have not been addressed, and we'll be open to that at the conclusion of the presentation of the developer, and if there are questions or comments from members of the board. So I wanted to frame this section to reflect the amount of work, the amount of participation, and the amount of collaboration that's taken place to date on this matter. And now I'll open it up. I believe Amy Farrell is here representing the developer, and I think we spoke about giving you a forum for tonight's Public Works Committee meeting under this consideration.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Amy Farrell with Kaplan Stewart. We are the attorneys for BG Capital and the related entity 7600 Tookany Creek Parkway CRCP, which owns and operates what was the former Melrose Country Club and which is now, as you've heard, proposed to be the Enclave at Melrose. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we do have a bit of a presentation for you to walk through so we can give you a sense of what we're here specifically about tonight. And, just as importantly, I think to Commissioner Zygmunt-Feld's point, what we're not really here about. There are multiple steps to this process. I think you can all see my screen now. And this will just give you sort of an overview, kind of refresher of where we are overall in terms of the proposed development for this site. This evening specifically, we're here in connection with the land development for the overall site improvements and for phase 1 of the building improvements. Now, as you know, we previously received, and as was just alluded to, all zoning relief related to this project and the overall plan. And we're now before you in connection with really the first phase of the development approvals. That first phase is twofold. One is the preliminary approval for the overall site improvements. That's the stormwater, the road networks, landscaping, tree replacement, et cetera, for the overall total site. So sort of the entirety of the site that you see on the screen now. The second component of the application is the preliminary final approval for the first, what I would call vertical phase of development. That's the traumatic brain injury component, which you see in kind of the light purple in the center of the screen here. Excuse me, and the residential on the north side of the parcel, and that's the light green and the orange. So if you recall, the orange is the 55 and over, the light green is the what we call market rate or unrestricted townhome developments. And that's an important distinction in terms of where we are and where we're not specifically this evening. So the phase one improvements do not include retail, the potential township amenity, the assisted living, memory care, medical office, or the southern residential. When we're ready to proceed with those in earnest, we'll be back in with the detailed plans for each of those components, and they'll be subject to the same review that we've just gone through and that we're going through this evening relative to this phase of the development. So what we are here tonight specifically to discuss, and again, it's those overall site improvements and the phase one TBI and northern residential. We submitted that initial plan back in February. We received review letters in March. We met with the Planning Commission and the Shade Tree Committee, and we had some additional meetings with township staff. We then revised and resubmitted the plans in April to address comments from all of those reviewing bodies. We then went back to the Shade Tree Committee and the Planning Commission, and we have received recommendations of approval from both of those bodies at this point. So we have satisfied all of their prior comments. And I would note, I know this board is certainly aware, but perhaps the public is not. The Montgomery County Planning Commission also sits as a representative on the Township's Planning Commission. So this, the recommendation for approval included all of the consideration of the comments that the county made in its most recent review letters. So we'll go through this in a bit more detail in a moment, slide by slide. But what is before you now for consideration is a revised plan which eliminates all of the waivers that were initially requested in February. And those were waivers related to driveway width, tree replacement, stormwater basin, and sidewalk widths. And it otherwise addresses all open comments around those initial reviews. So we're now also in receipt of an updated review letter from the township engineer, and will comply as to all remaining items with the exception of a couple of waivers that we'll get into in a moment. And additionally, as I mentioned, we have been back to both Shade Tree and the Planning Commission with the revised plans, and those are the plans that they recommended for approval. That includes tree replacement and street tree proposals. I know that was a consideration or a concern, certainly in some of the prior comments before the Shade Tree Commission in particular, and I think in some of the public meetings with the commissioners around the tree replacement requirements. So we are now will comply as to all of those. As you can see on the overall plan, just to kind of give you a sort of table set in terms of what's proposed, this is 114.83 net acres of development or of available site, I should say. Of that, we are developing on just under 40% of it. So we have 39.04% impervious coverage when we're done, or 70%, 70, is permitted. So we are well below the allowable impervious for this site. We're also providing just under 61% green area, where 30% is required. That translates to about 70 acres of green area and open space, including about 7 acres of programmed plaza spaces. As you'll remember, all of the internal improvements to this site, so everything you see within the rendered area here, is privately held and will be privately held. So the streets, the stormwater management, the landscaping, the lighting, everything associated with this development will be privately held. through essentially what is a planned community. So that means that the community, the developer, et cetera, are responsible for maintenance of the streets, maintenance of the stormwater, the landscaping, et cetera, trash recycling, all those things that would normally flow to the township are the responsibility of the property owners in this situation. We are also proposing sidewalks and curbing along the entirety of Front Street, along Ashmead Road, and Ashmead as it converts to Ryer, excuse me, to Ryers, and along the northern side of the Tookany Creek Parkway. There's also sidewalk and curbing along all street frontages internal to the site. We also have a combination of 10-foot and 6-foot wide trails throughout the site, which create a fully connected, interconnected trail system that ties into the sidewalk system as well, so that you can enter this site from the upper corner at Front and Ashmead, and through a series of trails and sidewalks, you can come all the way down through the site in really any direction you'd like to go, out along the southern end and connecting into the county's trail system. We also provided a combination of parking types throughout the site so that we provide all of the required parking while we're reducing impervious overall, rather than large fields of parking throughout the site. We do have a couple of those in key locations, but otherwise the parking is really concentrated in parallel parking and some perpendicular parking throughout the site. That allows us to meet all of the parking requirements while also helping with some of the traffic calming that the township asked us to take a look at. And overall, again, it's a mix of institutional, commercial, community spaces, as well as residential spaces. So it is a true mixed-use development. It's fully compliant and in accordance with the township's Class 3 MU3 district special exception. So what you see now on the screen is the plan as originally submitted in February of 2025, along with the waiver list as of that February submission. So as you can see, although there were only 5 waivers requested at that time, those waivers did generate a fair amount of discussion, particularly around the driveway width waiver, which the county and others were concerned would lead to a more vehicular and less pedestrian-friendly development. It also reduced the number of street trees that could be planted because of the way that the driveways were configured. There were some similar concerns raised regarding sidewalk widths and concern, as I said earlier, over the tree replacement and plantings, which was a pretty lengthy topic of conversation with the Shade Tree Commission. So we took all of that general feedback on those plans and those conversations. We went back, we sat with the developer and with our full design team, and we looked at how we could make some modifications throughout the site to eliminate those waivers and to, excuse me, and to address some of the county's other comments in particular. So there were, in addition to the kind of general concern about a couple of the waivers, the county was asking us to take a look particularly at parking specifically, and to make sure that we were providing opportunities for some guest parking, particularly in the residential zones where we could. Even though we already meet the ordinance requirement for zoning, they wanted us to make sure we were sort of providing enough guest parking where we needed to. So we took that plan, and as I said, we sort of worked through it. We resubmitted in April the plan that you see on the screen now. And again, we'll go through this in some detail in a few more minutes, or in a few more slides here. But from a 10,000 foot level, what I would say is that this plan that is before you now eliminates all of the waivers that were requested in the February 2025 plan and that gave some concerns. So in other words, we've adjusted all of the driveway widths to comply with the township's 14-foot wide requirement. We've increased sidewalk widths to 5 feet plus a verge throughout the site. We've adjusted all of the stormwater basins to the township's minimum 2% requirement. And we now satisfy all landscaping requirements, including tree replacement, bioretention, and infiltration plantings. So we are waiver free when it comes to those waivers that were initially requested and that gave the concerns certainly that we heard the first time through. There are a couple of new waivers that resulted from addressing the county's comments, and we'll get to those in a few moments. But from an overall plan perspective, the waivers that were creating this concerns under the February plan have all been eliminated. That also has allowed us in a lot of ways to improve, we think, the pedestrian feel along the streets in particular. So what you can see, and this is just a way, sort of a snapshot to give you at least a sense of a kind of side-by-side comparison of a couple of the changes that we made. So you can see on the left-hand side here, this is the February 2025 plan. And this is Road A, which is one of the primary kind of residential roads that runs through the site. You can see Road D here, which comes down into that large plaza area that's been created.
Amy, we're not seeing what you're talking about. At least I'm not.
I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it too.
Okay. All right, go ahead. I don't know why I can't. All right.
Okay. So the plan on the left-hand side here is that February 2025 plan. And you can see in there, the driveway proposal was for 20-foot wide driveways in front of all of the townhomes. We also had a series of units facing each other along Road A and narrower sidewalks in through there. Those were originally proposed at 4-foot wide sidewalks. So that was doing a few things. It was generating the need for a few waivers, driveway width, the width of the sidewalk, and we were losing some viability for street trees in there. The Planning Commission and the county asked us to take a look at that and see what we could do about, in particular, those driveway widths that were creating a lot of concern and some of the just general overall layout. So what you can see on the right-hand side is an example of what we were able to do, and we traced this throughout the site. So one of the first things you'll see is that we reduced the driveway widths to 14 feet at the street, which again complies with the township's ordinance requirement and eliminates that waiver entirely. We also took, you can see there's 8 units on the left-hand side here that were facing onto Road A. We flipped those inward towards the plaza. That allowed us to capture some parallel parking along this stretch of Road A and allowed for, you'll see in a moment, some increased green area so that a lot of these townhomes are now looking onto green rather than onto other townhomes. And the ones on the interior are now looking onto plaza instead of onto each other. We also increased the sidewalk width and the verge areas throughout the entire site. So all of the sidewalks are 5-foot minimum. They're a little bit wider in certain locations like the medical office building and a couple of other spots, but they are at a minimum 5 feet wide plus a verge, which again meets ordinance requirements and eliminates that waiver. And you can see, you really start to see it when you flip to excuse me, sorry, hopefully you can all see this. When you flip to the landscape plan, you can see what the real impact relative to that driveway change in particular is. So again, on the left-hand side is the February plan. Those 20-foot wide driveways really did not allow for shade trees between the units. When you look on the right-hand side here at 14-foot wide, we're able to pick up all that additional space to be able to drop those shade trees in all along that road frontage there. Additionally, by flipping those few units to the inside, as I was suggesting, you'll see throughout the site plan these sort of hatched areas. We worked with the township's arborist on the tree replacement requirements and the reforestation requirements, and you'll see reforestation zones throughout the site. This allows us to really green up a lot of those areas. Again, then by adding the wider sidewalks and being able to cut in some parallel parking along that roadway and some other similar locations, it allows us also to kind of increase the pedestrian feel along those street lengths. As I said earlier, one of the things that does come up as a waiver as a result of some of the changes that we made has to do with that request from the county to provide for some additional increased guest parking. We tried to highlight or identify places along what we'll call, the primary residential or sort of primarily residential streets throughout the development where we could add some guest parking. Where it's on a more, what I would call principal roadway, like the road A here, that connects through the site, we did that entirely with parallel parking. So you can see on the left-hand side here in this image, we've picked up some parallel parking in various spots along road A. We've also done that, as you can see in the center image, along road C and along the top of what is sort of a continuation of road A up there. Anywhere that there's sort of, we're anticipating more movement through the site, we've done that entirely with parallel parking. We did within the plaza area, excuse me, and in a couple of the residential zones, we did add guest parking in a perpendicular or angled fashion. That allowed us on some of the more secondary roads where you're really just getting residential traffic to pick up more guest parking than we would get with just parallel parking. That does, however, create a waiver request because the ordinance provides that it can only be parallel along streets. We had a good conversation with the Planning Commission about this. They were very comfortable with the perpendicular in-out parking that we have in a few of the guest locations for the residential areas. They did ask us in the plaza area to look at converting that to also perpendicular. They were a little concerned about angled parking on two-way streets. We've taken a look at that and we certainly can make that work. So we're able to make that tweak as we move forward and still add some of that additional guest parking that folks were looking for. And again, because we already otherwise meet the ordinance requirements for parking, if the board was not inclined to grant that waiver and insisted that it all be parallel parking, we could do that. It'll just be a little less parking on the site than we would otherwise be able to provide. But again, still north of what north of what we would otherwise be required to provide. And the final waiver, and I'll run you through the overall waiver list in a second, but the final waiver that was generated as a result of some of these improvements has to do with, and this is a partial waiver only, it's relative to a piece of sidewalk and curb along the southern portion of the development and the kind of southern front of Tookany Creek Parkway. So just to orient you again here. As I mentioned earlier, it's probably a little easier to tell on this plan. We are providing sidewalk and curbing all along Front Street, along the entire property frontage of Ashmead, along the entire property frontage of Ashmead and Ryers on the southern boundary of the property, and along this entire length of Tookany Creek Parkway on the north side of the parkway, right? So on the larger piece of the development. You can see on the southern portion, this dark line where my cursor is kind of, I'm sort of dragging it across here, that's actually our property line. There's a pretty significant amount of land between our property line and the Tookany Creek Parkway that is owned by, I believe it's the county, part of it might be the township. It's all wetland and the creek running through there. So we don't own that land. We couldn't put sidewalk along there, even if we were proposing it, since it's not our land. The only length of the Tookany Parkway frontage along the southern piece that is within or sort of along our frontage is this area you see in orange, this kind of long, skinny orange rectangle here. There's a lot of grade change and some environmentally sensitive areas in through there. So our suggestion, and we again talked through this with staff and they agreed, our suggestion was to not put sidewalk and curbing along that little bit of frontage there. It would be connecting to nothing. It would be in what we think are environmentally sensitive areas that we don't really want to mess with if we can avoid. And we have the entire trail connection system that runs from north to south. So folks will still be able to comfortably get through and across the site and connect in without that little piece of sidewalk there. Anton, the township's traffic engineer, did ask us in connection with that to provide for a four-way pedestrianized intersection at Tookany and Ashmead, and you can see that sort of down in the lower corner here. So that would be Basically what we'll do is we're going to extend our sidewalk along the length of Ashmead, along the township's property as well. So we'll make that connection through all the way to the intersection. We'll have ADA curb ramps at each of the 4 corners, and crosswalks and pedestrian signalized intersections, and pedestrian crossings there. So that was the kind of the thought for, rather than, messing around and mucking about in the floodplain here, let's provide a real true pedestrian improvement at the corner where it makes a lot more sense. So that really is kind of the full sum total of everything that we're doing relative to this particular phase of the development. As I said, there are a few waivers that are associated with that. The first is a request for preliminary final as to phase 1. So that's the residential and TBI. We're only asking for preliminary as to the overall site improvements because our expectation, I think, as Mitch was alluding to, is there will be some tweaks and some modifications as we work through the last of the comments with township staff. But as to the phase 1, the residential on the north side and the TBI, we think that is ready for preliminary final based on the status of the township's comments. The second request for waiver is for an aerial photo plan in lieu of offsite surveys. I think that's a pretty typical one that you see generally with land development. The third waiver is, again, that's a partial waiver, and that's for that angled and perpendicular parking that we were talking about. So those few locations on the plan where we would be providing angled or perpendicular parking in lieu of parallel parking. The fourth and the fifth both are tied to that waiver request relative to the sidewalk on the southern side of the Tookany Creek Parkway there. And again, that's a partial waiver. We're otherwise providing all of the sidewalk that the ordinance requires. With that, I do have with me this evening our team, so we're certainly happy to answer any other questions. As I said, we have been through the township's review letters. We've met multiple times with township staff relative to those letters. We're comfortable will comply as to all the comments that are still open. I think you'll see most of them are what I would call notational in nature. Add this note, clarify that manhole cover, those types of things. No large planning or design issues remain open at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell. Can we get back to the our access to the site, to the gallery of people online?
Yeah, let me figure out how to stop sharing here.
We may need to get back. Yeah, okay. We may need to get back at some point.
No problem.
Okay. Before we get comments from the commissioners, I'm sure there are some. I wonder if there's any feedback from staff that's been actively involved in a lot of this back and forth. Are there any questions or concerns other than what's been shared already with both the board and with the developer? I want to make sure before the board gets a chance to comment, if there's any outstanding issues that staff feels haven't been addressed. I see you there, Henry, Roger, so feel free to let us know if there's anything to this point that you feel like has not been attended to in the fashion that we requested or recommended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may go first, I'll be quick. Thanks, Amy, for the presentation. I think you missed one waiver. I did receive a waiver, a letter this afternoon at 5 p.m. regarding an additional waiver.
That was the preliminary final as to phase 1.
So you did. Oh, okay. Yep. You did mention it. Okay, I should have been paying attention.
Yeah.
Apologize.
That's okay. That was the only one.
Thank you. We are fine on our end, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Phillips, on your end?
I just wanted to kind of parallel with what Ms. Farrell was saying, that we've met a number of times with the developer and their design staff. And my latest review letter is posted on the website. You've all seen that. And they've indicated that they would comply with all of that. So what that would mean, I just want to clarify what's being asked tonight is it'll be conditional approval, and that'll be conditioned. One of the conditions will be to satisfy my letter. Another condition will be to satisfy Anton's letter. And until such time that I have plans in my hands that satisfy all of the comments in the letter, nothing moves forward and nothing gets recorded. So just so you understand that it's not like after tonight they run off and start putting shovels in the ground. So that'll be the process that'll be gone through, and Henry and I and Anton will all work together to make sure that all of those comments will be addressed prior to the plans being recorded.
Okay. Any other staff want to weigh in, or can we move on to the board? I don't see any other comments from staff, so I'll ask the board. And Mr. President, Commissioner Arman, you're first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Farrell, thank you for your presentation. I just want to make it just a couple of brief comments. In my view, this development represents an opportunity for the township to bring in a multitude of entities that do not exist here in Cheltenham. I'm talking about, in some respects, housing, but more so modern, advanced medical facilities, which bring with them jobs, which bring with them community, which bring with them the opportunity for us to have people who, in many respects, have concerns about being able to age in place, now have an opportunity to take advantage of facilities that really haven't existed here before in Cheltenham. In addition to that, it brings in tax revenue, and fairly significant tax revenue. One of the things that Ms. Farrell mentioned is that this is going to be privately owned, and I think we've heard, perhaps in a previous presentation, the economic impact, and we're talking significant dollars every year from this development. And that does not include the job creation part of it, which is critically important, particularly at this time. The staff that are going to be coming in to work at these medical facilities really inject a lot of jobs at all levels, right? From doctors all the way down to maintenance staff in these buildings. And it is a really potentially impactful and exciting project. To make matters, in my view, even better, the process, if possible, right? I see Commissioner Rappaport laughing. The fact that this was presented through an extremthis intensive iterative process, right? It came to us in one form several months ago. This developer made a commitment to not only this board and our staff, but to our committees and to our residents to take feedback, to make changes, to do the things that have been asked of them. It's sort of it's wild to see a development of this size that is simply asking for so few and relatively low impact waivers, and that's a testament to the work that has been done here, both by the developer, but also by our staff, by the Shade Tree Advisory Commission, by the Planning Commission, and again by staff, Henry, Roger, Allison, etc. So I am, as you can tell, very supportive and thankful for the developers' sort of engagement with us over these many months. With all this at stake, it makes this project, just a much better product. Not only, I think, for the developer, but certainly for our community. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Arman, I'm going to go in the sequence that I saw the hands raised. So Commissioner Cherico, you're second.
Sure. Thank you so much. Some may remember I spoke about my concerns on some of the initial waiver requests a few, maybe a month or so ago. What I didn't know when I made those comments was that the developer had already made changes to those waiver requests in light of some of the comments from the county planning commission and I guess the township staff as well. And so Amy did call me and we spoke for about an hour or more a few weeks ago. I really appreciate the opportunity that I had to speak with her and learn more about it. So I too am supportive of this program. I see the opportunity for active adult community to be something that we are in dire need of here in Cheltenham Township. I think this program as a whole is a win for Cheltenham Township, and I'll be supporting it as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Chirico. Commissioner Norris, your hand was third.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question. I'm in support of the project, but Amy, a question. I think I read on something else that the phase 1 would be the residences and the commercial buildings were phase 2. And I'm just wondering why, especially because I thought months ago, you or the developer had indicated that for the medical office buildings, you had tenants waiting to move in. And I was anxious to see those buildings go up quickly. So
yeah, so I wouldn't, it's phase 1 is part of the residential, right? So it's the northern part of the residential and the traumatic brain injury piece. That's one of the institutional commercial pieces.
Oh, TBI is going in phase 1.
Yeah, the TBI is phase 1.
Oh, okay.
So part of this has to do with timing of contracts. Part of it has to do with timing of improvements and when pieces of the site can be available, right? So the idea here with the overall site improvement, the request for the preliminary on the overall site improvement is that essentially we can effectively start in the upper corner, work our way through the site with the site improvements and come out sort of the opposite end. That allows us to then start releasing certain pieces of the site to the end user developers, right? So to the residential, to the TBI. Those were just simply the two that were ready first in terms of final, dotting I's, crossing T's on contracts and being sort of in the pipeline. We are, and I don't, Joe, I think has never been shy here, and he doesn't really hide cards. I can, with very much comfort, I think I can tell you that we are in the final stages of contracts. Again, I's and T's on both the MOB, so the entirety of the medical office building, and the assisted living facility. So our expectation is that is going to be phase 2, both of those pieces, and that they're coming in quite quickly here on the heels of phase 1. Eventually, the last phase really is likely to be that phase 3, which will be the upper retail component and the potential township amenity, once we sort of get that piece worked out. Where the southern residential falls in there, not sure, probably phase 2, maybe phase 3. But it is all moving quite quickly. We're expecting that phase 2 submission will come quite quickly on the heels of these phase 1 steps here. So this is not, we're not sitting for 3 years waiting for the next piece to come in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Rappaport.
Okay, thank you very much. So first of all, thank you very much for addressing the county issues. Those had been mine as well. I didn't know if you were coming. I had, of course, written all kinds of concerns about those earlier waivers. So glad to see that kind of progress, really very reassuring. But I do have a whole bunch of questions, and I'll just try to be real fast with them. One of them was actually what a colleague just asked about the phasing, because in so many of our other projects, we insist on the retail and the commercial coming in before the residential, or in that order. So that was part of my concern. And so when you talk correctly, you said it's not 3 years. Are we talking this year?
Yeah, we're talking months. We expect
Okay.
we'll be with phase 2 within the next few months.
Okay. Another set of questions concern me about what is the preliminary, which things were the preliminary versus which things were the preliminary final, and how that plays out. And this goes back to what our engineer was saying. So he had, and I went back and reread the May 14th letter, and it has, I would say, at least, well, it has a lot of issues that you say will be taken in the future, will be complied with. And we see that a lot in preliminary approvals. But to my mind, I saw about 36 of them that seemed substantive, really substantive, things relating to the detention basins or the infiltration beds and discharge and NPDES permits, things that made me, and the non-point source controls, things that are really significant to my mind. And so the question that hit me is, are we really ready? If these aren't on the plans, are we ready? And I guess I'm asking both our engineer and you all, because yeah, I don't like giving any kind of final approval, even if it waits for our engineer to sign off on it, without feeling like the board is going to get another crack at some of those more substantive issues.
So I think the first piece of your question is really what sort of answers that that concern, right? So the question was what's just preliminary versus what's preliminary final, right? And what's just preliminary is everything that you just talked about. So the preliminary approval is related to the overall site improvements. So that's the stormwater, the roads, the curbing, the sidewalks, the landscaping, all of that. So that gives us the opportunity to then go back through with Roger, make sure that he has all the information that he needs. He's got all the reports, he's got all that. We've got some plan tweaks to make. So we'll come back for final on the overall site improvements. That's where all of that lies. That's where the stormwater is. That's where the discharge is. That's where all of those considerations are. The preliminary.
We will see that.
Yeah, because it's part of a final submission. So it will, when you don't combine them, it's a two-step process. So when we come back for final, it goes back through everybody again. And at that point, Roger will have reviewed the next set of plans and confirmed that it satisfies all those requirements. So the only piece that's before you for preliminary final is the phase 1, the physical, what I would call vertical or building improvements relative to the TBI, so the traumatic brain injury units, and the pad sites for the residential components. That's a much smaller, as you can imagine, piece of the development than the overall site improvements.
Okay, so then that brings me to some of the other questions. In some of the documents, I don't remember now which one I was reading, but it talked about 70 to 80% of the trees surviving, and that mimics the normal survival rate, something like that, a natural survival rate. And I'd like some clarification, please, on what that was referring to, because when it comes to replacement, I expect replacement that's going to live as they are replaced, not succumbing to whatever, oh, well, we'll just put them in and then we expect a dieback. No,
Right.
When trees, baby trees are replacing large trees, I expect them to survive and become adult trees. So.
Right, and that's why the township has a maintenance obligation in your land development agreements, and I think Ed could probably speak to this as well, but there's again a two-step process in terms of the record development here. So once we have all of our approvals in place for each phase, right, as you complete a phase and you get ready to record the plan, a few things happen. Roger's going to review it all, make sure the plans satisfy all of his and Anton's requirements and their comments. Ed's going to write some, I hope not too draconian, but fairly draconian land development agreements, right, which obligate the developer to do a whole series of things, right? We've got to build in conformance with the plans. We've got to post financial security that guarantees that we're going to do those things. There's, a separate stormwater management agreement that gets recorded in the county now. There's a separate financial services agreement that gets recorded. All of that has to happen. We've got to post all of that before we can start moving dirt. Got to get all of our outside approvals and everything else in line as well. Then we can start moving that dirt. Once we're moving dirt, Roger and Anton and Henry and the rest of the team are out inspecting regularly to make sure that we're meeting all of our requirements and that we're building in accordance with the plans and all of the approvals and all of their comments. When we eventually get to a point where we've done all the work and we say, hey guys, we're done. We've done everything that we were required to do. They're going to come out. They're going to take a look at all that. We're going to get to a point where we all agree that that's been done. They're going to reduce our escrow, right? So because we've done the work that we were supposed to do, we get that escrow back. However, there's a mandatory 18-month maintenance period in the township's agreements that parallels the MPC. And the township is permitted to continue to hold escrow dollars against those improvements and guarantee that they are maintained and that they operate properly. So that becomes particularly critical with stormwater and with landscaping, because if something's going to fail, it's usually within the first 6 to 8 months, maybe call it a year, but certainly within the first 18 months. And we're obligated to replace and repair throughout that maintenance period. Did I get that right, Ed? I think I got all of it.
I agree with all of that.
All right, thank you. Another part, and I know that you're not obligated by our building code to reach certain levels of sustainability in the buildings that perhaps I would like to see, or perhaps our sustainability plan would like to see. But I would like to hear you all talk to the sustainability of, this is a large community we're constructing, both in terms of residential and in terms of major commercial buildings. So when I think about Ready for 100, when I think about the kind of energy and all the other aspects of a sustainable building, talk to us about that. And what are you going to do to make this development, to make this community useful for the future of Cheltenham in that sense?
Well, I'm not sure that there's a specific or particular answer there for a couple of reasons. One, each of these components is, the decisions around what a building looks like and what its materials are and how it consumes energy are specific to those end users or operators. So each of these buildings, most of which haven't been designed yet, the extent to which they will or will not have additional sustainability features beyond what the ordinances would require, I can't speak to specifically. What I can say from an overall perspective is that I think when you look at this development, particularly as a result of all the work that's been done around eliminating the landscape waivers and eliminating some of the other waivers that we were originally requesting early on, we're at a site where we're permitted 70% impervious here. We're at 39%. We are planting, it's thousands of trees by the time we're done because of the township's tree replacement requirements. So we've taken tremendous I think we've made great strides, and we've taken a lot of time and a tremendous amount of energy to create a development that provides services that the township doesn't have, but does it in a really respectful way. We could have developed twice the footprint that we are, and we elected not to do that. We found creative ways to get to numbers that will support a development of this size and still not chew up, incredible amounts of site area. We've also taken an incredible amount of time to be very, very careful about where we're developing on the site. We're staying out of all of the environmentally sensitive areas. We're out of floodplains. We're out of riparian buffers. We're out of all of those areas. We're not touching any of that, even to the extent that where there are existing trails in those locations, we're leaving those trails rather than tearing them up and putting new trails and disturbing more space. We're tying into those existing trails. So I think from an overall development perspective, to the extent that an overall developer can control it, they've made a lot of conscious decisions to be cognizant of and to be careful about where we're doing it and how much we're doing. Whether a particular building is going to have a green roof or solar panels or reclaimed water, I can't say. We're not that far along with those individual users.
Well, I appreciate the answer very much. And because it hasn't been designed yet, I would respectfully encourage, especially when you're looking forward to the mechanicals, that serious thought is given to going beyond the minimum and continuing in that sensitive way to make those conscious decisions for forward energy use. One last thing, the slides that you presented tonight, they were great. I haven't seen them yet. This was the first time I saw them. They weren't in the materials that we got in preparation for tonight. So I appreciate if we could get copies and put them on our website so that other people can
Sure,
see them
I'm
as
always
well.
happy to share the presentations. Yep, we'll get them over to Henry.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Rappaport. Thank you, Ms. Farrell. Commissioner Barkington, I know you've been waiting patiently. Feel free to weigh in as much as you need to. Irv, you're muted.
Thank you. Good evening. With this property being in my ward, I sort of wanted to hear from my other commissioners to see what they had to say. But first, I want to thank Amy and your staff for what you guys have done. I know that this has been, and we still got a lot to do, but thank you for what you've done up to this point. You're always available to speak to me and to anyone about just what's going on. I did have a question about the trees, but Ann just sort of answered that. I did want to ask, can you go back over the angle parking as
Sure.
to, will that be something that, and I know that's sort of a minor thing, it's not, but it's something that's different in this township. I've never seen that we've done angle parking. Will that create, I'm assuming that will create more parking spaces by doing an angle instead of parallel? Is that the
So
reason?
let me pull it back up and I can show you where hopefully you guys can all see my screen again. So here you can see in the area around the plaza in particular is where we were looking at it. By doing that as angled parking instead of parallel, you can see, you can imagine you can get a lot more spaces in. You get probably 3 angled spaces for every 1 parallel space you might get. However, as I said, the Planning Commission asked us to take a look at whether we could turn those into perpendicular spaces, even if it means we lose a few. So they wouldn't be parallel necessarily, but they would be perpendicular. So it's a little cleaner in terms of the in and out. Their concern with the angled was that these roads in through here, all of the roads are designed to be two-way roads in part to meet.
Okay, that was my other question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
in part to meet all of Scott's fire truck requirements and all those good things, right? So we had to make sure we can get fire trucks through everywhere and that it's, easy to get around. And the Planning Commission, and we felt like it was a totally fair comment and very on point from them, that because that's two-way traffic, the angled parking could get a little confusing, right? You're going to end up with somebody trying to pull in the wrong way into an angled space.
Right.
Whereas if they're perpendicular, everybody, whether regardless of which side of the street you're pulling in from, it's a cleaner turn into that space and out of that space. So we certainly can, we're sure we can at a minimum make those perpendicular. We're going to take a look and see if in a couple of the places, if it makes more sense even just to make them parallel. You know, in an area that's got more of a curve to it, for example, it might be a little cleaner to just make those parallel.
All
But
right,
either
so
way, we're over the zoning, the total requirement for parking for zoning. So we have some spaces to play with in there.
okay. I'm glad my 10th grade geography class is coming.
It's
back, you know, the perpendicular and angles and stuff. So great. So the sidewalks along Ashmead and Tookany Creek Parkway, will that mean you will have to take more trees down?
No, so the trees are fairly far inboard. The existing trees that are there are inboard of a fair amount of that sidewalk. So there's some that'll come down, but I think for the most part, and I believe Anthony's on still, he may have a more accurate answer for you than I do, but there was a fair amount of work that, if you remember, because of the gas line.
Right, that's why I brought this up. Yes,
right, where a lot of trees had to come down because the gas company insisted on it. So we're already intending, you know, in order to meet all of our buffer requirements, there's already going to be a pretty significant tree buffer that goes in along there. We're saving all the trees that we can along that frontage, but there will be some, I think, that will come down. Most of those, I believe, still remain because of where they landed.
So I know there was some talk, some chatter on some social media websites. So I just want people to hear, any tree that's going down, you're going to be replacing the trees. You're going tree for tree.
Correct. So there was a lot of chatter online about trees that came down recently and some
Can you
concern
speak
about
to that? Yeah, can you speak to why and about that?
Absolutely. So a few different things happened. One, as I mentioned, there's a very large gas line, underground gas line that runs along Ashmead that serves, I think, most of the township, a pretty significant chunk of the township in terms of natural gas service. The prior owners for 10, 12, 15 years had really not maintained the landscaping on site in any significant way or in any meaningful way. That resulted in an awful lot of trees on site that were diseased or dying or had already died. The gas company, when they came through, identified a whole series of trees along and in the vicinity of the gas line that were impeding the gas line, and they were insisting that those trees come down. In addition to that, there was an incident on site with a tree that appeared healthy and was not, and killed a young man. So, that also obviously became a pretty significant concern for the developer as the property owner at that time, to make sure that we were getting as much information as we could about the condition of trees on site. So what the developer did, in conjunction with the township, so this was not done in a bubble. We worked with the township's arborist, our own arborist, and the township staff, including fire and emergency services. So Scott Lynch and several of those folks as well. We worked with all of those folks. We put together a tree survey. Every single tree on the property was looked at, and it was documented what its size is, what its type is, and a two-stage condition, whether it was structurally sound or not, and whether it was healthy, diseased, or dying. And there's a whole plan that township staff has seen as we've worked through this that identifies all of those trees in terms of what trees needed to come down immediately, what trees could wait and come down at some later point, and what trees perhaps didn't need to come down at all. There has been an ongoing maintenance program on the site over the last about 2 years, I think. Some of those trees that we talked about early on relative to the gas line, and then others throughout the site that have been brought down over the last about 2 years. The last of that maintenance work wrapped up early March. I want to say it was like March 8th. That's when some neighbors, we think candidly on site when they weren't supposed to be based on where the photographs were taken from. But there were some neighbors who took some photographs, decided that those trees were healthy, and contacted the township to say that we were quote unquote clear cutting trees. We obviously responded to that. We explained all of this. Township staff has looked through all of that. They have agreed with us that everything that came down so far came down as part of that maintenance program. We take that very seriously. We absolutely want to make sure that nobody's in any danger when they're out there. And so, this is a part of dealing with sites that are this large. In addition to taking those trees down, because every one of them was marked already on that survey, we have accounted for every single one of those trees, the ones that came down already and the ones that will come down as part of the development. Every one of those trees has been accounted for in the tree survey, and every one of them is covered in the tree replacement requirements. That's in part why the tree replacement obligation is so significant. This township has a very, very aggressive tree replacement ordinance, very aggressive, perhaps the most aggressive in Montgomery County. And we had to spend an awful lot of time making sure that we're satisfying those requirements. So that's kind of the long-winded way of saying we did everything we were supposed to do. We've been continuing to communicate with the township throughout, and we will continue to do that as we move forward.
So currently, is this property open to the public to go on and walk around? And
It is not. This is a private property. And that will become certainly more critical as we move forward through construction. I think people would be upset if I went into their backyard and took photographs. You can imagine on a property of this size. We just need to be conscious of that. And again, as we enter construction, that will get to be even more of an issue. It is not going to be safe for folks to be wandering around this property.
Thank you. And so just to let you know, like I said, I support this this development, and I look forward as we move forward, with this. And Mr. Chair, I'm done with my questions. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank
I have
you.
one question, Amy, and we've talked about it in the past. We'd like to get, I know things are in transition, but we'd like to get an updated fiscal impact study when it's available and when you've made the determination that it's something that can be shared with the board, with our director of fiscal affairs, with our lenders, as well as with our community. So when that's available,
Yep.
we'd like.
Yeah, and we can certainly, I think actually, we'll take a look, but I think what we shared previously, I don't think the numbers have changed that much because the square footages haven't really changed a lot. As we go forward a little bit further and we get into phase 2 and we have the real square footages on the MOB and the ALIL in particular, that's probably when we might want to tweak them. But just to sort of remind everybody, we were looking at, based on the plan, pretty much the plan that you see on the screen. It was a net fiscal impact to the township of 1.67 million a year and a net to the school district of 5.9 million a year. And that again is largely, certainly on the township end, is largely because we're going to own everything. The township's not going to own the streets. The township's not going to own the sidewalk. You don't have to maintain any of that. It's all being maintained by the developer.
Thank you very much. And
You're welcome.
I hope that was absorbed by both the board, by residents, as well as by those from the school district that might be online. So with that, I'm going to then close commissioner comment, and I'm going to open up for comment from residents who have clearly shown a keen interest and concerns. And I'm going to ask that we try and deal with the matters that have been raised and that are part of this preliminary land development application, and things that haven't been addressed, but we'll open it up. And Township Manager, I'll ask you to limit it to 3 minutes. If somebody's issues get more significant, I think it's worthwhile for something of this magnitude that we'll let it stretch a little bit. So, and I can't see all the hands. I see one hand right now. So we'll open it up, but please, make sure that everybody who wants to weigh in has an opportunity to do so. So I see Rhonda Isser, who is always involved in infrastructure issues. Rhonda, I see your hand is raised, so please feel free to weigh in with your experience and your knowledge and the concerns that you bring to every situation like this. You are muted at this point. Rhonda, are you able to get on? We'll get back to Rhonda. Allison, do you have other residents with hands raised?
No, I think Rhonda is the only one at this point.
Rhonda, we would be losing your sage counsel. Can you hear me?
Manager Elliott, are you able to unmute her?
I am not. It's not on our end.
Yeah.
Okay. Rhonda, I'm sorry, and I'm sure that we'll see comments, constructive comments from you on your website. So I will ask, there's no other, so I'm gonna close.
Mr. Chair, can we ask Rhonda, maybe she can type her comments in on the chat?
Sure.
Okay.
Can you do that, Rhonda? Well, we're not gonna know.
No, we're not gonna know. but
Okay,
she
so
can
I'm
comment.
gonna, it's just, we have to move on. So I'm gonna close public comment, and I'm gonna now move to consider the question. I'm also gonna ask for each of the commissioners to be polled rather than this to be done as a group basis. So again, item B is to consider recommending the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution granting conditional approval and associated waivers for preliminary land development application CTDA number 25-02. The Enclave at Melrose, 7600 Tookany Creek Parkway, for the proposed development of a former golf course into a mix of residential, institutional, commercial, and community uses. Removal of existing buildings and golf course amenities by regrading the site and installing new private roads, sidewalks, pathways, utilities, and stormwater management infrastructure as part of a phased approach, all of which has been discussed in this meeting as well tonight. So I'll ask Township Manager Free to poll individual commissioners on this.
Yes, I'll start with you, Commissioner Ziegfeld,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis,
Aye.
Commissioner Brockington,
Aye.
Commissioner Rappaport,
Aye.
Commissioner Cherico,
Aye.
Commissioner Norris,
Aye.
and Commissioner Arman.
We have unanimous approval on this matter. So I will close that. I thank everybody, thank the developer and their attorney for the candor and for the detail that they provided. Thank staff for their continuing involvement and oversight, and thank the board for our part in overseeing these kinds of things. And I will now move to item C.
Thanks,
Consider
everybody.
recommending the Board of Commissioners approve a change order in the amount of $61,909.71 for additional time and materials to prepare the proper foundation for the stabilizing imbricated wall for the Streambank Restoration project on Tookany Creek at Kleinheinz Ponds. There is an attachment. And for those of you who didn't experience it, we had a wonderful show at the recent fishing derby, and part of the work that's already been done was reflected in that. So I'll ask if there are any questions or comments from members of staff on this or from members of the board. Sam, you're not going to get showcased tonight, so we can move on that. So I will take a vote. All those in favor of the recommendation to approve the change order in the amount of $61,909.71 for the additional time and materials to prepare the stabilizing wall at Tookany Creek at the Kleinheinz Ponds, please say yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that approves. We go to item D. Consider, Sam, here's your chance. Consider recommending the Board of Commissioners award a contract for biodegradable and recyclable paper, leaf and grass collection bags on behalf of Montgomery County Consortium of community members to MID Hardware, Inc. in a cost of 0.626 or 62.6 cents per bag, resulting in a total bid from our vantage point of $37,560, subject to favorable evaluation of the bid documents which are submitted and attached. Are there any questions or issues, Sam, on the submission and the information that we have to this point? I'm seeing none. Any members of the board have any questions or concerns on this?
A question for you. Are these bags that we make available for free at the library and other places? Is that what?
No, these are
They're not free.
chargeable bags.
They charge.
No, I want to make sure we're charging for all of them. I want to make sure that I wasn't sure if they were being made available for the cost that would recoup that payment.
We've always charged for them. They've never been free. We charge roughly the cost of what we have to buy them at.
That's what I'm asking. Okay.
Yep. Any other questions or comments on this? Okay, so I will move for approval of the recommendation to award the contract subject to favorable conditions in the amount of $37,560. All those in favor of the approval say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? None? Okay, so we are ready. I see Rhonda. I'll recognize you in a moment. Are there any other matters for new business? I see none. I will close new business. I will open citizens forum, and the first person that we will acknowledge in citizens forum, hopefully she has gotten her technical problems resolved, is Rhonda Isser. Rhonda?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, praise God. I got a new device and I'm always embarrassed when it doesn't work. I do have one question this week, no surprise. Since it's a phase in, Amy, can you answer how many EDUs you're going to need? I know what the total is for the whole project, but just for phase one, do we know how many EDUs we're going to need?
I don't think she's on the call anymore.
I think it's in the documentation.
But
The
it's in the
number
doc.
that stuck in my head was like 562.
No,
And
that's
they
for
op-
the full, Mitch, from my understanding and what I was told, that's for the whole project. I was just curious about phase one.
Well, we can ask and we will be happy to find the answer for the phasing and get it to you and also publish it on the website.
Thanks. Yeah, that was just my curiosity because if they can phase it in, that would be quicker than having to get all 580 from the DEP.
Okay, thank you. I see Jeff Plout, my friend and an active member of both EAC and STAC. So Jeff, I'm sure you have a question or two. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mitch. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep.
First of all, as a member of the STAC, but not speaking for the STAC, I want to say that working with the developers of the Melrose property was really eye-opening. They were amazingly flexible and very responsive, and hopefully that will continue. And hopefully we'll find developers as cooperative as they are. One request that I do have, we worked on the newest version of the single-use plastics regulations that we're proposing for a year. We made a presentation about those recommendations for the elimination of styrofoam food containers and the restriction of the distribution of plastic utensils and straws to make them on request. And we presented that in February. Subsequent to that meeting, within a few days, we sent the township sample ordinance from Newtown Borough that has already passed this, as have 16 others in southeastern Pennsylvania. That was in February. It's 3 or 4 months later, and looking at continued play on the, all we're asking is to look at a similar regulation that can be drawn up from the model that we sent in. So all I'm asking is that the commissioners and the township try to expedite that and not delay it another 3 months, when we could be benefiting as a township and as a community from the plastic distribution that would come from a more expedited response to that request.
Jeff, thank you. You may have missed during the reports, you may not have been online, but I actually posed the question to our township manager and staff, and we're gonna, the representation was made by our township manager that we try and address that by the end of the summer. And I believe that's now a commitment that we'll have for the end of the summer to be able to get the ordinance updated and before the board and through the various entities that are going to have to authorize and review it. So thank you for the reminder. I jumped the gun after you sent me the email earlier.
Well, thank you for doing that. And as always, thanks to all the speakers for enduring meetings. Not just this one, but all the other ones you have to facilitate throughout the month. We appreciate all the work you do.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other people wanting to weigh in on citizens forum, Allison?
No, I don't see
No?
any.
Okay, so I'll close citizens forum. I will move for adjournment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very
Aye.